I'm a South African, proudly South African, but I'm currently living my passion and my dream in England, and what I'm seeing at grassroots levels Sunday mornings where my boys play. There's a lot of very good rugby players in English Rugby.
When we came back to Bath on the Sunday after winning the Premiership final, I don't think any of us could have expected what we saw in Bath on that Sunday afternoon.
As a South African, we've got so many challenges, but rugby is the one thing that unites us all, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world. You can only understand it when you are South African and what that does to you.
Yes, that's the program.
Whatever this is, yes.
Yeah, whatever this is.
This is the Big Jim Show.
On this episode, I am joined by Bath Director of Rugby, an all-round legend, Johann van Graan, and also, he's a legend as well. He's my former agent. He's now head of recruitment at Bath. It's Rob Burgess. Enjoy. What are you writing down?
So, it's just if something comes up. But what I found with writing is, found when I put something in my own handwriting, it's kind of I'm committed to it. And then I learned this from my dad: is try and summarize and remember the important bits in 2 ears and one mouth. So every evening I go before I go to bed, I go through the day, and then next morning, okay, what have I got to do and what have I learned? I've got this bit that a few promises I made to myself back in 2003 about what am I going to do throughout my professional coaching career. And one of the bits was learn something from everybody. So a lot of the times I learn what not to do. But yeah, so that's the reason behind it. And then, so for instance, one-on-ones are, I know not all coaches believe in it, but I believe in spending time with players. So because that's one-on-one, nobody else is in the room, I always write down what was said. So whenever players comes in 2 or 3, so this is the one-on-ones from the last few weeks. Alfie Barbary, Will Stewart, Tom Dunn, Thomas Ditway. So sometimes it's only one word that was the main discussion point. So I can always go, and I think I've got a pretty good memory. So my memory I can remember, but then I can always back it up. And then every book they numbered, and then this is book 8 for the year. So it's all the most important things about my life. It's kind of a guiding principle, really, and that's the reason for it. So that's the thought for me in any case.
That's cool. Hey, and what is the most important thing in your life?
Family and God.
Mm.
I've got what I believe in, but that's for everybody to decide what's theirs. And then my family is said to the team on the very first day that. The day my wife tells me, look, this is done, then I'm done with rugby. I hope she never does. But no, family and my kids, for me, that's why you're here, is to live for your kids. We waited a long time for them, so my wife and my kids, absolutely number one.
Yeah, it's been an incredible season for Bath. Well, actually, it's been an incredible 2 seasons. And when you look at sport, some people will argue that it's all about winning, right? And other people argue it's about the journey and everything it takes to get to that point. And as you made a final the year before, that's still a successful season. But this year you went one better. You won the Challenge Cup as well. You won the Prem Cup. It's been an incredible, I'm going to say, would you say 2 years, or would you say the whole time that you've, how long have you been there now?
3 years
It's
now.
3 years, okay. So it's not a bad 3 years, is it? You go in there, make the changes, make a final. But just go specifically on this year. Have you had time to reflect? Can you reflect as a coach, or is it all about what's next?
I think reflection is important. I think the year started on the 15th of July last season, and in auditorium we kind of put the first day of pre-season, which was 15 July, and we put the Premiership final date, kind of looking at it as a journey. And one of the things that we said from last season is we need to get better, and in a winning environment, you can taste it, you can feel it when you walk in there. And we said we need to make sure we get better. We were so close, led with a few minutes to go. And the second bit round was champion's mindset. What does a champion do? A champion don't need a trophy to show you're a champion. You live it every single day of your life. And that was very important to the playing group, that we get better as a group. And that was something that we did every single week. And getting back to zero, you can see that in so many different ways, but that was from the start till the end of the season, is get back to zero. Who are we? What we're about? What's our main objective? How we're going to get there? And each week reassessed, and then kept learning lessons every single week, because I think that's the beauty of rugby. There's no game the same, and the players, the coaches and the staff were fantastic in the season. And look, it's 48 weeks. It's a long time. It's going to be high. It's going to be low. You're going to be up. You're going to be down. And I think it's how you manage the season, and then time. Every human being gets 24 hours a day. We all get 24 hours a day. For me and for us, it's who uses it the best. And from time, it's not only rugby. And I think that's one of the things that we've done really well. It's about living a balanced life. Family first always. Rugby is what we do, but it's not who we are, and we've created an environment where people can be themselves. And I think that's one of our points of difference, is it's a club for all, and once you're in all of the time. And yeah, it's been some journey.
Yeah, it's been really cool to see, because you look at a city like Bath, and Rob, we know we were at Gloucester, we were at a similar club where it's central to the heartbeat and the identity of the town or the city. And you see the scenes and the Bath fans with what they've had to go through. And I remember maybe it was your first year, or it might have been the year before. I remember it was pissing it down with rain, and not one Bath fan left in the arse end of winter. Yeah. And I remember making a comment on it. I was like, this is incredible to watch, because arguably some other clubs would have just been like, we've had enough now. There's been no success coming. But I suppose you saw something in that club, because you're at Munster as well, which again was a traditional club. You come from a traditional background in South Africa as well with the Bulls. Are you drawn to that tradition? Does it need to have a history for you to be fully in on that?
Yeah, so grew up next to the fields of Loftus, really, as a ball boy, and my dad was the CEO there for a very long time, and I saw all these magical moments appear before me, from Currie Cup finals, 88, 90, 91, first test match when I was 14 years old, England versus South Africa at Loftus, 95 World Cup. Saw when Emil Intermac scored on the left-hand corner against the Scots, and I remember Philippe Silla running past me, seeing John Olomu in the quarter-final, All Blacks with their white jerseys, running over Scotland. Rob Andrew gave me his jersey in the third and fourth playoff at Loftus. Watching the Springboks play, and then played there as a junior, and went away for a year as a young technical analyst. There wasn't things like that at the time, and Heineke gave me a phone call in 2003. I was at the Pumas at that time, and started at the Bulls on the 1st of November 2003, and 9 years at the Bulls. Very traditional. The old Northern Transvaal Bulls are renowned for their forward play, proper 9 and 10, and then magical moments, and then 6 years with the Springboks. That was the ultimate, being involved with the Springboks for 6 years, and then first head coach job at Munster, stand up and fight. Very value driven. Learned so much there, and I could associate with the things that they stand for. And then Bath, club that was founded in 1865, and then when we started on July the 11th, 2022, not a lot of the things that I thought I was coming to was there, and that's why I only speak from that date going forward. I respect the history and what went on before, but it's all been about recreating our own identity, us as a current group, and writing our own history. And again, bought into what Bruce had a vision for. And I met him back in 2016. There was an opportunity to coach Bath back then, but the timing wasn't right, and I stayed with South Africa. And I always had this picture of the wreck of Farley, and then Bath as a rugby city. And then I remember our first home game was against Sale, and packed out wrecked. It was also the weekend, unfortunately, that the Queen passed away. I remember it so fondly, and I remember how quiet it was. A few weeks later, we played against Bristol in the Prem Cup, and obviously my responsibility, but I wasn't coaching the Prem Cup. And I sat in the stands in the rain, in the cold, and we didn't score a point, 28-0. We lost the game, and the people stayed. And I went home and I said to Melissa, I don't understand. I don't understand why the people stay. And fast forward, spoke to Andy Robinson on the Monday after the final, and he said, "You do understand now?" And I said, "Yes." Because what I saw on the Sunday after the final was incredible. People love their rugby. It's a rugby city. And in life, people need people to inspire them, and I believe this group have inspired them by the journey that we've been on. And I want to reiterate the we, because it's not me, it's all of us together, and everybody's got their role, right through owner, board, CEO, heads of department, coaches, players. Everybody played their role, and most important, the supporters of the blue, black and white, because ultimately that's what rugby is about. For me, it's about community. It's about speaking about memories that you go through, and specific moments in time. And yeah, it's been an incredible year.
What does Bruce say when you have your interview with him, or you talk to him? When you're sat there with him, does he say, "I want to bring you in and I want to win the Premiership, I want to win the Champions Cup"? Like, how do them conversations go with a new coach that's incoming, and how do you manage them expectations?
I think when I came in, it was a very different time to what it's obviously as we speak today. Bruce's biggest vision was a winning team in the heart of the city, and people being happy, and a club that was exceptional. He speaks about this word, exceptional, and what Bruce has done in his let's call it his personal life, his business life has been exceptional. So I could align with that vision. At the time, he said, "Johann, do you believe you can make us better?" And I said, "Yes, I do believe I can make the club better." I think the main thing from my side was, this isn't going to be a short-term project. It needs to be a long-term project. I don't believe in short-term success, because success is about people. It's about making people better and taking people with you on a journey. And I said that if you allow me and the people that we all bring in time, we will get better. There was never a discussion about a trophy. There was never a timeline on what we need to achieve. I spoke about this is going to be a journey, and it was 3 years initially. But there was never a discussion about you've got to win a trophy by this time, or he was actually amazing in terms of support. I'm good when I know exactly where I'm going, and there's this game that we played when we were in primary school. It's called Game 24. It kind of gives you 4 numbers between 1 and 9. You've got to use each once, and you can plus, minus, subtract, and multiply. So I'll give you a very simplistic example: 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 4 times 3 is 12, times 2 is 24, times 1 is 24. Or a more difficult one, 9, 8, 3, and 1. You can go the easy way. 9 divided 3 is 3, times 8 is 24, times 1 is 24. Or 9 times 8 is 72, divided by 3 is 24, times 1 is 24. The point I want to make is I didn't know at the time exactly how we're going to get there. I knew what we needed to put in place, but I could see the end result. I could see people in the city. I could see a full rec. I could see a winning team by performing consistently. And I think that's the bit. We don't speak about results. We speak about a process, and you need certain things in place for a process-driven winning team with a world-class pressure environment, because ultimately we all want to win. We want to be part of something special, and that's been led by Bruce and the board, and they've allowed all of us the time and the resources to build a team that can consistently compete. And I'd like to think we've done that over the last 3 years.
I was going to ask, what do you need? So if you were to make a spine of the team, the squad, and the wider squad as well. Like if there was a few I know there's a load of things. I was at Saracens when we had the success that we had. I was at Scotland where we didn't have any success, and I had my views of like what the spine of the team should be. For example, superficially, if you want to call it that, you need a world-class 10. You've got that. I think you need a robust front row because of the scrum so important. But then there's other things around that, and there's loads. You need wingers who can score tries. So I'm going to be very superficial, then get your opinion. But you also need an unbelievable performance director that understands bodies and multiple bodies of all shapes and sizes, which we didn't have for large parts of my career because we were quite archaic in some of the teams that we were in. But in the successful ones like Leicester, when it was old school, I could kind of pinpoint the spine of the team and all of these different things. We were probably ahead of our time when it came to performance. And then Sarries was the perfect example because we had world-class players as well, but we had an unbelievable performance strategy in the background as well. If you could pinpoint a few things of making up a successful team, what would be like the non-negotiables that a coach needs?
Firstly, is good people. And I'll speak about two categories. Firstly, your heads of department, and I include your coaches. And when we started, that was a non-negotiable to me. Operationally, you need somebody that knows exactly what they're doing, and we brought in Fran Leighton, who I actually met at the 2015 World Cup. She was our liaison officer. She was the water polo captain at the 2012 Olympics, and she was exceptional, and so we brought her in. At the time, Bath had a very poor injury record, and they faded away in the second halves of games. So the best of the best, Rory Murray, head of medical, and Alex Martin, head of, at the time we called him the head of athletic performance. Now we call it physical performance. So those two gentlemen were exceptional. Sarah Jenner, head of nutrition. I believe nutrition has got so much to do with your performance. And Sarah joined me at Munster from Australian rules, AFL, out of Australia, and then she came with Craig Lillian and Dan Cooper were at the club at the time. I believe in coaching there's the balance between the art and the science, and Dan gave me a lot of the actual science about what is actually happening in the game. And then a few people that we added, JP, Blazy, Stevie, Andy, in terms of the coaching group. And then Rob was kind of one of the last pieces of the puzzle in terms of recruitment and retention. And you speak about recruitment so much in sport, but the key thing is retention. And how do we balance what we have with what we're coming through? And then you get to the playing group. And I believe you need special players who are hungry, are mentally tough, and they need to love rugby. Because the season is so long and you need to consistently perform, you need players that love rugby. And then within that two bits that we were specifically looking at when we started is leadership. And leadership is such a widely discussed topic. For me, what is leadership? You must first be able to lead yourself in your position. Selflessness, part of a team, part of a squad. And we've spoken about our squad so much, and specifically the purples, the colour purple in our squad. And that's the players that are not playing on the weekend. And then spine of a team, you need a front row. You need to win your set piece. The line-out is a massive part of the game, so a 5-lock is such a big part of let's call it the modern day of rugby. And we retained Charlie Eels, and we brought in Ross Malone in experience in that position, calm, in very dynamic times in games. You need a 9 and a 10, because ultimately those are the two most important positions in my view. And if you look at champion winning sides, World Cups, Champions Cups, Super Rugby titles, Premiership winning titles, it's your 9 and your 10. Then multi-skilled backline players, guys that can play multiple positions. And then I believe rugby is a very simplistic game. And if I cut it back to one thing, it's the gain line. You're either going forwards or you're going backwards, and it's players that can take you forward, but then also players that can absorb pressure when you're going backwards and remain calm under pressure. And I say those parameters for what we retained and then what we recruited I think we recruited very, very carefully. There was a big turnover of players in the first year, but the second and the third years, only 4 or 5 players. And the biggest focus has been retention, and then bringing players through that can be the future of Bath. Because ultimately, taking it back to one of my first comments, it's community. People want to support players that are from their backgrounds, and I learned that at the Bulls. I saw that at Munster, and I see it at Bath. Players are supported when they come from Chippenham, when they are from Dorchester, when they've been at Beach and Cliff, and I think that's one of the most underestimated things in our game. It's people are proud of where they're from, and we found a good balance in terms of keeping players that are from Bath. But then I think, Jim, a very important bit about recruitment is people want to belong to. People don't want to be told to. People want to belong to, and we've made our environment that any new player coming in is part of Bath, and they're part of that environment. So people, it all comes down to people, in my view.
Yeah, that's brilliant, mate. Great context. Rob, you sat there listening, but you know all this anyway. I've done the intro already, so I would have introed you in as the great Rob Burgess. But you were my agent back in there. You did my Montpellier deal, didn't you?
The glory days.
When rugby was rugby. You did
24 hours in France, Montpellier, Paris.
Paris.
We popped to Paris.
Nearly signed for Paris. Nearly signed for Racing.
Yeah.
I changed my mind all the time, didn't I?
You probably should have signed for Racing, maybe.
Yeah, I did a year at Montpellier with Fabien Gaultier. Why didn't I go to Paris? Do you remember or not?
I don't know why you didn't. I think we got locked in an office in Montpellier, didn't we? It was quite hard to get out of it.
It was the beach, and it was the weather, and it was the wrong decision. So I went for the wrong reasons. I was in my prime, I would have said, and it was the 2013 British and Irish Lions tour, and I was meant to go on the tour, and then Paul O'Connell got fit quicker than they thought, so I didn't go on the tour. But do you remember I needed shoulder surgery? I don't know if you remember that. And the Lions were going to pay for it if I went on tour. Then they didn't because I didn't go on tour. So Gloucester had to do it before I went to Montpellier. Otherwise, Montpellier wouldn't honour the contract. Anyway, Rob was a part of the chaos then.
It was chaotic.
Is it still chaos now in your role?
Honestly, like the last 2 years has been... I feel very fortunate to have arrived at a club at the right time. I think timing is a massive thing in life, and sometimes you plan for it, sometimes you just stumble into it. And it was probably 2 years ago this summer I had a first chat with Bath, with Johann and Tarquin, our CEO, and fortunately, I took the opportunity to come and work with the club, and it's just a great environment. And I think what Bath's benefiting from now, which it probably didn't have in the past or certainly in recent history, is just the stability of leadership at the top, and stability off the field. And you experience that at Saracens. I think most successful teams are based upon stability, and I think that's what Bath is kind of starting to appreciate now.
And also investment and money. Tell me, I know your lad's in the football system as well, but from your experiences, having been an agent, worked at the RFU, in the role that you're in now, why as a sport do we not talk about money? Don't go on Rob at Bath, go on your wider perspective. Your lad's in
Talk about money in what sense?
Player value, how much someone gets paid, transfer fees, how much Finn Russell's just re-signed for, Santi Carreras, how much was he on at Gloucester, how much does he sign for Bath, how much is Owen Farrell's deal at Saracens, Maro Itoje, how much is he getting paid, how much is Peter Steph Dutoy getting paid in Japan, what's Ebenezer getting paid at the Sharks.
But do we see that in other sports?
Yeah.
Transparently?
Well, I think transparently. You tell me otherwise. NFL, you do. Football, you do. You know how much players are worth, and therefore it's a very topical conversation. It builds narrative, it builds news, it builds value, it builds like commercial currency. From
a Bath point of view, we're in a competitive sport. I think sharing of information is, we're very kind of comfortable and confident in how we go about our business. The need to share that with others isn't really.
You're giving me a straight back. Take that bit out of it. Just as a fan, I wanted genuinely, if you can tell me why we're not comfortable to talk about money.
Maybe it's an English mindset. Maybe it's our culture. Perhaps as a sport, we've grown. American franchise sports they've evolved differently. So everything has been like public knowledge for a long period of time. Maybe it's something the sport needs to look at going forward. I do recognise, I think rugby has recognised the need to evolve. So I think you see a lot of initiatives to try and develop the sport. I think the Premiership has recognised the need to move forward, the rebranding next season, capitalise on the new TV deal. But certainly rugby needs to keep changing to be relevant in the new world.
Yeah, I just think we need to put a value on these athletes now, because I think having that transparency of what the players actually go through and what the value associated to that is. Forget that, it's cool, you've got £1 million or €1 million players, and whether or not that is the case or not, I don't even know. I think I know because I'll chat to agents, I'll chat to mates or whatever, but it's bizarre to me that we don't know, and that's where the question marks come up, and we'll get into it, where obviously I was involved at Saracens when all that stuff was happening, and they were using ways of, I don't want to say manipulating the salary cap, but they were doing things that they thought they could do and get away with, and that is what every single sport does. So with your role at Bath, can you just maybe explain what you do, because you've done a fantastic job, and I think, again, we don't really know because no one knows, but I think you're going to share some of the things, how you get some of the best players to come, how you can re-sign Finn Russell, how you can get one of the Premiership's best players, Gloucester's best player in Santiago Carreras, to come over from Gloucester to Bath. Gloucester get rid of 19 players and you keep adding. And I think I know, but maybe you can just explain your role and like how these things work.
So the basic role is obviously to compile a squad that fits within a salary cap. So we have a salary cap that's relevant for the senior squad. We can go into the numbers in a little while. And then you have your academy players that have come through your system and are homegrown. So effectively they've been in your system since pre-18. They sit in a tier where you can spend effectively an unlimited amount on that group of academy players up to a certain ceiling. So there's an earnings threshold of 50,000 per annum. So as long as they're 24 and under and they've come through your system, effectively they sit in a tier of spend that is unlimited.
And they can, so in the academy, they can earn up to 50 grand.
Yes. And obviously as players develop, and some develop faster than others, their wages will go above that threshold, at which point you have a choice to take them into your senior squad, or if you can accommodate them. If not, they need to go elsewhere. So the primary focus that people are interested in is the senior salary cap. So it's about getting a balanced squad that can deliver what Johann needs on the field, that fit within the parameters that the salary cap puts upon you.
Which is what? What's the salary cap?
So the headline salary cap is 6.4 million, and then on top of that, you get allowances for certain things that you can deliver, and there are probably two main pots that you can dip into. So homegrown players who have developed through your system, so they've come through your academy and got into the senior squad. You can have 12 of them where you allocate a £50,000 credit. So 12 times 50 is 600k. So that's an immediate 600k on top of the 6.4 million. And then the second pot to access is international credits. So when you have players that go off and play for England or indeed other countries, you can access credits for them, and that's worth 400k. So that adds on top of our 6.4 plus 600 plus 400. So we're immediately up to 7.4. And what's important to note about that is not all clubs would have 12 homegrown players in their senior squad. Bath didn't for a period of time, but in recent history has grown to now accommodate 12 homegrown players. And the international credits, you have to have players performing internationally to access those credits. So again, the better a club performs, logically more players are going to play international rugby. Therefore, you get to access more credits that allow you to spend to a higher level on the cap. On top of those, that's your basic cap explained. In addition to that, you can have a marquee player that sits entirely outside those numbers. You can spend what you want on your marquee player. I think in the last salary cap year where there's a full report, I think all but one of the Premiership clubs had a marquee player. One club opted not to have a marquee player. And then finally, when significant injuries occur of 12 weeks or more, you have the option to replace that player in the squad, or effectively bring in a replacement player who doesn't sit in your cap either. And you have a total allowance of 400k for injury replacements throughout the season. And again, that's a voluntary choice of a club. Does it A, have the cash to do that because it's extra cash, and B, do the injuries occur of 12 weeks or longer that allow you to bring in players to do that? So once you add up all of those things, an English club could comfortably be spending in the eights, within the realms of 8 million plus on its squad in total.
So, the international credits, is that just England, or can that be any international?
So predominantly England, it's those that are named as EPS squad players. You get a £40,000 credit for each EPS player that you have named in the squad each summer. But where you have non-English players that play test matches that clash with the Premiership, so if there's a weekend where there's a clash between Premiership and International, then you can claim a credit for them as well. Now, those clashes are reducing. The calendar is kind of sorting itself out. They call it deconflicting. So there's less examples of weekends of the Premiership that clash with test matches, but they still do occur once or twice a season as well.
Tell me why the salary cap's in place.
So I think a salary cap forces good habits on clubs. So in a world where commercially if we were all performing brilliantly, it would be a way of keeping clubs to a level that creates good competition, that creates multiple winners of the Premiership over a period of time. What's probably happened in recent history is I think not all clubs are spending to the salary cap. So I think wind back 5 or 6 years, majority of clubs were spending to the salary cap, and you could see a lot of kind of commonality across squads and profiles of squads. I think where the observations are happening now is we're trying to compare all 10 clubs in the Premiership, where the reality is you're seeing a difference in spending levels across clubs. So it's very hard to compare like with like. And that's coincided with the cap returning to the level 6.4 million this season just finished. The season before it was 5 million. So COVID had an impact, and the cap got reduced because of the impact of COVID. So you kind of had two things kind of arrive at the same time. The cap has gone back up to the 6.4 level at a time where some clubs are voluntarily choosing not to spend to the cap. And that's where you're getting this separation.
And that was going to be my point, because if it's meant to be like an even playing field, and you don't want teams running away with having much bigger squads, yet the teams like Newcastle, I think Exeter and Northampton, there could be a couple of others, but I know that they're not spending up to the cap, then why? And I don't know whether you're happy to answer this, but if you're thinking as a club you've got a motivated owner who wants to invest, say Saracens are the same, say Bristol are the same. I don't know about Bristol, I just imagine that they would be really keen to invest in the squad, is like as a coach maybe, so as you look forward to next year and wanting to build a dynasty or whatever it is, but more specifically you want to compete in the Champions Cup. I don't know, Northampton were an outlier this year, they beat Leinster, but if you were to go base over the next 5 years, that if you're at a club that wants to compete with Toulouse, compete with Bordeaux, compete with Leinster, and we don't know what the salary cap is there. Like, no, I've kind of asked the question. I've had Martin and I in the studio a couple of years ago from the URC, and no one really knows. In top 14, there is a cap in the top 14, isn't there?
Yeah.
But
I think it's related, your turnover or your commercial turnover maybe relates to it. Or
do you not think it's crazy that we don't really know? Yet you, as a club, are expected to compete against a Toulouse. Who's in your pool next year?
Munster.
Okay.
Cast. Toulon. That will be a very big game for us. Edinburgh. And the English team is Gloucester. I think, to your question, what's happened in the Premiership factually over the last few years is squad numbers are reducing. So each club can decide how many players they want. We've taken the approach that we're going to lessen the numbers. We're going to make sure that our academy functions very, very well to make sure that we bring homegrown players through. And then, Jim, for me, rugby is a squad now. You need to make sure that you play multiple players. That's why we've been very specific in the players that we go after, players that can play multiple positions in certain instances, and other instances, players that are specific to their position. And then in terms of the actual cap, that's way beyond my pay grade. I think I can only speak on Bath's behalf. I think what we as a club have done is we are aiming to break even. We are aiming to be commercially a lot better and a lot better aligned. And I think that's been driven by our board and by our CEO. And I think they've done a fantastic job in terms of making sure that the club is aligned. And you've got to give Northampton credit. They went away in a semi-final and they beat Leinster, and they competed in that final against Bordeaux. So you've got to dream big dreams, and I think English teams have done remarkably well over the last 3 seasons. Certainly, when I joined the Premiership, there was a lot of doom and gloom, and the unfortunate, well-documented bits around Wasps and Worcester and London Irish and Jersey. But I think everybody in the Premiership have worked together. All 10 clubs are working together. I think it's a fantastic product, and I think if you just look at the scenes at Twickenham a few weeks ago, it means something to win the Premiership. It certainly meant a massive amount to us as a club, and you want to compete against the best. And at this stage, the French teams have won the Champions Cup over the last number of years: La Rochelle, Toulouse, and now Bordeaux. And I think that's the challenge of sport. We've got certain parameters. Personally, I see that as a positive, and see how you can make yourself better and test yourself against the best. And again, I want to give credit to all involved at the club, because we've taken this challenge on and we're facing it head on, and let's see how far we can take this. And ultimately, you need players that are hungry and want to get better, and then you appoint people that can do their job, and Rob's been fantastic in that bit. And I think the alignment bit is understated. You need to make sure that your recruitment is aligned to what the coach wants, and you need to make sure that the players understand what's their role in the team, and you need to make sure that you're aligned with your owner. And in our case, he's been fantastic. And I think the other bit around, there's so much spoken about the cap. I think so much needs to be spoken about the environment, because each club has got the decision how they want to create the environment. What does their training week look like? How much time do you give guys off? How much family time do you give guys? How much do you look after the families on game days, on your off days? Do you make sure that players can have a balanced life? How do you exit players? How do you help them to plan for life after rugby, which is such a massive bit in our game. So I think, yes, it's the cap bit, but it's then also the environment that you create, and clearly people want to be part of this environment, and we constantly looking how we can make this better, how we can be ahead of other teams, because ultimately it's about competitive advantage. We want to make sure that we do a better job than our opposition, whilst respecting the Premiership. And look, personally, I believe the Premiership is in a great space. There's stories about Newcastle and about new investment coming in, and how positive will that be that we can all become better, all teams come better, and who knows, there might be more clubs joining in the coming years in terms of a franchise league. And I think I'm a South African, proudly South African, but I'm currently living my passion and my dream in England. And what I'm seeing at grassroots levels, Sunday mornings where my boys play, there's a lot of very good rugby players in English rugby. And we've toured the country with Bath FC where my boys play, and we went down to Cornwall a few weeks ago, and then you come to the London Irish Festival in May, and you see 4,000 or 5,000 kids playing, and I'm seeing rugby being healthy in this country. Yeah,
and you've got people like yourself who are fronting a lot of that stuff, and it's incredible to see. And I've got other mates who coach, and I wanted to ask about how difficult it is. I know you've just given the positives there, which is great, and the game at the highest level is in a good place. you can see the mental toll it takes, because it's week on week and everything you've got to go through, not just managing salary cap and squads and emotions and 40 odd men with egos, and some are up, some are down, the injuries that come with that. What are the physical demands on these players now? So if the game is the best it's ever been at the highest level, what are you seeing physically that the players are having to put themselves through? And are you comfortable as a coach with that? Are you comfortable with the amount of games? I don't know how comfortable you are maybe sharing your personal views on that.
So firstly, I don't see social media a lot, and I don't see all the comments a lot, but sometimes I hear that people claim that rugby's gone soft, or we must go back to the olden days. I'd say rugby is currently the most physical it's ever been. The players are the fittest that they've ever been. There's a massive focus on mental well-being. There's a massive focus on on-field and off-field performance, how you eat, how you sleep, how you recover, how do you plan your week to make sure that you don't overtrain, to make sure that you don't get soft tissue injuries, and when you get trauma injuries, how quickly can you get players back? I mean, Ollie's done his Achilles, Jaco's done his ACL, and your biggest asset is your players. You've got to look after them. Do I personally believe there's too much rugby? Yes. But that's not something that I can control. What we can control is look after our players the best we can. That's why squad planning is so important. That's why you don't only need one hooker or 1 9 or 1 10. You need multiple 9s, you need multiple 10s, you need multiple players that can play different positions. That's why I believe in the PGP there's a number of games, and we understand that rugby is not perfect. Sometimes you're going to get injuries, sometimes players need to play more, sometimes guys will get injured and play less. I spoke about the art and the science. Sometimes your eyes tell you that this player needs a break. The very best want to play every single week. Communication has been a big thing for us. Clarity in terms of planning breaks. I'm going to give a simplistic example. Thomas de Toey is somebody that plays cross hemisphere. It's not perfect. The Argentinians, the Fijians, the Samoans, the Tongans, there's a lot of players playing cross hemisphere. South Africa playing the Rugby Championship, playing the URC, where the players get rest. The only thing we can control is the players at our club. And Thomas is somebody that's been magnificent for Bath. In my view, is one of the best props in world rugby. But we've got to look after his body, and something we did out of the ordinary this season is we gave him the whole of February off. And I told him that back the previous November, so that he knows he's got 5 weeks in February when he can go wherever he like in the world. No expectation to do anything, the trust that he will look after his body. He came back, he played in the quarter-final against Squins in the Prem Cup. We didn't play him in the semi-final against Newcastle in the Prem Cup, and then again he played his second game in the Prem Cup final against Exeter, only playing 40 minutes 2 times, and then he's in the back end of the season. Now he's back to South Africa, and we wish him the very best for the test matches in the Rugby Championship. But you have to look after your players, and I believe players will go where the clubs look after them, look after their long-term bits, because the longer a player can play, the better for them, not only financially, but obviously having time to plan the rest of their lives. And I've been fortunate enough to coach some amazing players, and big injuries will happen. And most of the time, the first bit is once you've done your ACL. Charlie Hughes has been an incredible example of that, is making yourself better, understanding that injury will actually put more time into your career if you use that 6 or 9 or 12 months very well, either by studying, starting a business, making sure that all your off-the-field stuff are in place for when you finish, whether that's in 5 years or 10 years' time. And I think that's where, again, the full circle environment comes in. You have to look after your players, because rugby is tough currently.
Yeah. Rob, do you remember back in the day we had the contracts? There was that 6-month clause. If you got injured, what would it be? Would it be half pay, or that you could get sacked effectively after 6 months?
If you're still injured at 6 months, there's a route to being released. Yeah.
Is that still in there?
So it's gone up to 9 months. So there's a lot of better protection for the players. and it's very rare. Like I couldn't tell you when a club in the Prem last activated that.
Yeah,
It'd
well,
be
that's
a
good
very
to
rare
hear.
scenario.
It was more common back in the day.
There was a
wasn't
fear
it?
of it, wasn't there? There was a
There
big
was a fear. Yeah, so if you got injured 6 months, you wrecked your knee, and it was longer then. It was probably a year that you were out. Well, I'm sure your salary got.
There was an
Cut.
opportunity to reduce it for a 3-month period, and
Yeah.
then if you were still unfit, you could be given 28 days' notice.
Yeah.
So now there's better protection, and the RPA have been kind of good in terms of getting that into the standard contract.
Yeah. Would you say that players are looked after? I know they are at Bath, clearly. They were at Sarries, and this is why I will defend that club for the rest of my life. Forget the Champions Cups and the Premierships. The way that they looked after their players physically, and you had the complete trust that you could put your head in the spokes and come out with no ears and no eyes, that you were looked after for the rest of your life. Like, you felt that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and that's where 100% players are looked after, and I can speak from my experience at Bath, yes. And it's why, when people talk about the salary cap and like what are Bath spending and do they have an unfair advantage because they're spending to the cap and others aren't, if you think it's just about the money, you're miles off. And it's almost like it's a good thing if people think it's just about the money because that's the only thing they'll think can solve. But, the environment we've got at Bath and everything that we're doing around the edges and the quality of support staff and the stability of, as I said, of leadership, there's so many things that go into making a good rugby club, which you've seen in your career. And yeah, the players are looked after. I think the game, as Johann says, there perhaps is too much rugby, but that's because we've got a variety of competing competitions, and you've got your international rugby as well. So perhaps if there is a kind of not a red flag on the horizon, but just something we've got to be mindful of, it's how you manage players across what effectively is a 45-week season now, isn't it? I think we went from November to 14th of June without a weekend off because we progressed in all competitions. It was relentless. And I think we used 57 players over the Prem in Europe. You need resources to manage a season of that length. So that's something that the game has to be mindful of. But we know there's a long history to trying to, fit everything into the calendar, don't we?
I think you're being too kind. Why can't you just say it straight that there's way too many games?
Because you need games for commercial income. Like we're trying to do this fight where we're trying to raise commercial income so we can spend to the salary cap. It's with a well-resourced squad of the size we have, we've managed to compete on all fronts.
Can we not say, though, that rugby's probably, in the next 10 years, never going to make money? Like, why are we not comfortable to say...
Why do you think that?
Well, because that's what the finances tell us, that if teams are losing 3 or 4 million... I don't know what Bath's books are, because a lot of things are closed off unless you go into the books at the end, but there's so many different things that go into that. So if you look at a club like Leicester, for example, one of the biggest clubs in the world, one of the most followed clubs in the world, like they are losing money every single year. And I'm thinking, well, how do they then change that? Is it by being successful and winning the Champions Cup and winning the Premiership like they did back in the day? Maybe. What's that going to do? Is that going to sell them more jerseys? But in order to do that, you need to pay £1 million to bring a Andre Pollard replacement in, which they've not done.
But I think one of the plans that you've seen is, and Bruce talks about it a lot, is the evolution of the Premiership, and they talk about a franchise model. And one of the key kind of drivers that would be relegation as a threat is something that perhaps deters investment. So if you move to a model where clubs can kind of secure their place in the Premiership for a fixed period of time, then you're more likely to encourage investment. And we hear talk of potentially Newcastle having new investors. We need new money coming into the game, but you'll only do that by creating a secure model where people are safe with their investment. And now, clearly, that's what the Premiership is talking about, moving towards. And so this rationale that the Premiership can't make money, I think that's flawed. What we've got to do is create a better product that people want to watch. So they tell me the viewing figures for the Prem final were record viewing figures. The new TV deal's 5 years long, and it's the money's gone up from the previous deal. So, and like we're all rugby fans, you look at the product on the field, it's incredible week to week, isn't it? So whether Leicester are losing money or not losing money, I'm sure Leicester have a route to become break even and potentially profit making, but it's not an acceptance that they're losing money forever. And I know Bath has been in a position where it's kind of lost money, but we've got a route to break even and then to kind of flip into profit. So I think you've got to believe that there is a better future, and you've got to believe that if we can bring good players to the club, you get fans that want to come and watch. And ultimately, if we can put bums on seats, that's how you generate your income, isn't it?
Exactly that. And that's where, with the salary cap, it's lost on me. I understand it completely.
So is your problem that there is a salary cap?
Well, my problem is that there's a salary cap, but the other clubs don't spend up to it as well. And my thing is also, if you have a motivated owner, which many sports teams in the world, across any franchise that you look at, whether it be football or NFL or ice hockey or basketball, they're all rich owners that own the club. That is, unfortunately, or fortunately, how you look at it, what is underpinned by sport. And I know rugby's in this weird spot at the minute, but if you've got a salary cap, and yes, you can have a marquee player, and I like that you can have that. The argument could be to have two. But if Leicester can't keep a Andre Pollard, there could be family reasons why he's going back, so that's probably a poor example. Or Bath can't entice an Anton Dupont to come over to literally rocket shirt sales because you've signed the best player in the world, or a Peter Steph Toy can't go to Saracens when the owner I don't know if he does want him to go, but if he did want him to go, because again, you look at other sports and you look at trying to build fandom, you need the very best players coming, not leaving. And we are seeing that now with some of the lads that are moving to France, and we're looking at some of the best players in the world outside of France that either go to France or they go to Japan, which we can all agree is nowhere near the product of the Premiership. So you'll know better that if they want.
But what you can't do is encourage, clubs to spend recklessly beyond their means. So I think at the moment, I think it's a good thing that clubs are spending responsibly.
But who decides what's reckless and responsible? So
But
if you've
also-
got a billionaire owner and you've got a millionaire owner,
But you go to NBA basketball, there's still a cap. There's still confines. You've got billionaires owning that sport, and you have a draft system, and you see a change of winners of the NBA year on year. Like, it's a sport that kind of works within a system that creates parity. And I think the Premiership, when it evolved, was always about a collective. So a lot of the way the Premiership operates is about clubs sharing in income. It's done on a very equal level. The wealth is spread across the 10 clubs, and I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing for the sport, because ultimately you'll end up with a sport that has a variety of clubs, a spread of clubs across the country, and the chance that we can all aspire to win stuff, and we've got to work bloody hard to do that. I think your model, where if you've got a wealthy owner who wants to go for it in an unregulated fashion, the danger is that club will run away, and you'll end up with the same winner 10 years in a row, and I don't think we want that either.
Yeah, I don't think unregulated, but I mean in line with every other rugby team in the Champions Cup. Like, specifically, if we're looking at Northern Hemisphere and the South African teams in, because I'm watching the Champions Cup now, and I'm mates with people that are in there. Don Mackay, who's the chairman, and we've had these conversations around it. And I mentioned the Northampton, the outlier, but how is anyone meant to compete in that tournament now from the Premiership? And I know that Northampton did that, but you look at the route that they had, which again is a conversation for another day, how all that's done. But in a congested season already, when you're adding in them games, and then a lot of the games become dead rubbers because teams will literally say, well, we can't, we're not going to win the Champions Cup. It just ain't, it's not going to happen, like, realistically. Yourself might have an opportunity, Sarries maybe, now that they've got Owen Farrell back, maybe on their day. But that's not an even playing field. So the only even playing field is within the Premiership. That's it. So it's not within the URC because there's no cap in there. It's not within the Champions Cup because there's no cap in the URC, and there's top 14 is double the Prem cap, triple maybe.
Well, it's hard to compare. Someone who's played in two different countries. Tax is different. So you can take a €200 salary in France and compare it to 200 in England. It's different. Immediately start. You're married with kids. You have a different tax rate. It's very hard to compare cross nation. I think the question about whether we can compete on the Champions Cup is more for Johann to answer. But I don't think we associate direct spend of cash with our ability to whether we can compete in the Champions Cup. Because if it just came down to that, then that would be a pretty boring thing to be involved in.
I get that as well. But you look at it, if you were to lay it out on paper, okay, the teams, the ones that have won it, and then everyone else, Like, you know what I'm saying with it. That's it needs because we keep talking about a fair and even playing field and all that, and I get that. If we're going to do that in the game, if that is the regular season that the teams that I'm interested in, which is the Premiership and the URC as well, some of the teams in there are going to compete with in that competition. Otherwise, what's the point in having a competition where it's not even, and it's only even in the Premiership because there's a salary cap and we all want to abide to it. That's my point. Because then, if you want the game to grow and you're watching the Champions Cup and Gloucester are sending a second string team to Munster because they're like, well, hang on, commercially we need to make top 6 or top 4 or top 6 to get back into Europe because there's more money if you make it into the Champions Cup, right? Is that right?
You benefit through better crowds.
Okay.
Yeah, there's more interest in your games.
Okay, so that's the only benefit. But if they're going to send a second team to Munster because they've got to play against Northampton the week after to make top 4, then that completely devalues the competition, and then the players are having to play a game which effectively is development.
But I don't think just removing a salary cap limit or increasing it by 2 million is the answer, because then you will get reckless spending and you'll get clubs spending beyond their means. What the Premiership is trying to do is create a model where there's genuine interest in it as a product that will increase commercial value, that might elevate income to a point where you can consider increasing the salary cap. But I think we're quite away from anyone tabling that as an option at the moment. I hear what you're saying, and that's because your personal view is for Bath to compete in the Champions Cup is the next logical step. Now, that may or may not be what drives people in Bath to come and watch us. It might be to retain the Premiership. It might be to win the Premiership Cup again and see our young players developing. Like, that's one view of what is a next step for Bath.
Is the next step to win the Champions Cup, Johann?
Firstly, you enter every competition. I think every single team in the world enters every competition with big dreams. So if I speak about Bath, from the start I said, always dream big dreams because big dreams makes a man's blood stir. So from a Champions Cup point of view, when you see the trophy, you see the history of it, you see the teams that have won it, you listen to the theme song, something happens within you. I think for us, the next progression is get further than we did last season. And a year ago, we lost to Exeter away in the round of 16. So what you need to do really to compete in this competition, you need to get home playoff games. And I think that's, if you just look at all the competitions, URC 1 and 2 play in the final, Premiership 1 and 2 play in the final, French Top 14 1 and 2 play in the final. So the point I want to make is, if we want to do better in the Champions Cup, we need to get 1 or 2 in our pool. So I think that's the next progression. And then, like all teams will tell you, once you get to the knockout stages, anything can happen. So, we'd want to improve, but I think, for us, we've never spoken about, we've got to win this trophy at this season, because so many things happen in a season. So for us, it's making sure that we improve on what we did this season. I'd say from an English point of view, over the last number of years, no club have retained the Premiership. And if I see what it did to the people of Bath, is that will be a goal of ours again, is can we get into a semi-final position again? And as we saw, I think both semi-finals this year were fantastic. So get into a playoff competition in both competitions in terms of the Champions Cup and the Premiership, and then anything can happen. The Prem Cup will be different this year because the Championship teams aren't in it, and then you've got to see where you're at certain points in the season. So obviously we won it last season, and we'd like to compete again as much as we can. But to your point about the amount of games, the cap, the number of players, I think that's why it's such a unique environment. It's about balancing all of those things, and certain teams make certain decisions along the way. We've sent heavily rotated teams to do the best for us. In the last round of the Premiership, we made 23 changes for our team against Saracens, and I thought we fought till the end. We lost 36-26, but got a bonus point away from home. You've got to make decisions to the best of your ability, and from my point of view is I'm currently at Bath, and we've got to make the best of what we have available to us. And in terms of your point, sure, it'll be amazing to have a bigger cap, but you've got to work in your environment, and everybody in the Premiership, you've got to give people in the Premiership some credit as to where we were 3 years ago and where we are today. And to Rob's point, we're all dreaming to get better, and hopefully all of the Premiership teams keeps elevating, and it's such a fantastic competition to be part of. And then once you get to Europe, anything is possible, and I think that's the challenge, is chasing the French, is can we catch them? And I'm certainly in sport to try and get better, and that's what we as a club are going to do. I can't speak on behalf of the others, but we're certainly going to try and get better, and there's some very good teams in that French top 14 currently.
Yeah, you've got an incredible squad that you've both put together. I'll name drop a few. I'm going to miss a load of quality out, but if you've got Benno Urbano, international, Thomas du Toit, to quote Johann, and many other people, one of the best tight heads in the world. He's brilliant. You've got Quinn Root, who's capped as well. Yep. Ross Maloney, is he capped?
No, he played
Wicked
for
player.
Ireland A.
Yeah, he's a brilliant player. Like, your back row is littered with talent. Ted Hill is unbelievable. Guy Pepper has been standout this year. Alfie Barbary, capped.
Alfie's not capped yet.
Is he not?
England
No.
A.
Close to be. Ben Spencer, who should have 1 million caps and doesn't. Finn Russell, one of the best 10s in the world. Ollie Lawrence, one of the best centres in the world. Joe Thokanasiga, who's incredible. Will Muir. And I know all of these players aren't classed or would fit under world class, but a lot of people are asking how, Rob, and I'm hearing rumours, don't know how happy you are to share, of like the Moneyball model that you've got, but to sign Carreras next year, who's been one of the standout players. But are you happy? Because people are asking about how are Bath doing this, and I'm hearing like rumours that you have the kind of model where it's done slightly differently or it's done smartly. I don't know if you're willing to answer. Like, how are you doing it?
I can talk in general terms. I think, firstly, there are a lot of rumours, and 90% of them, you look at them and they're very like misinformed. And we sit here in Bath. It's not for us to correct, things that are false, because, we don't need to react to stuff that's in the external to us. We just look after our own business. But as I explained to you, the cap is, you can look at the cap in individual years, or you can look at the cap over a 2, 3, 4 year period. So for us, it's about managing a squad that fits within a cap. Now, what time frame we do that over is different for each player, but ultimately, any contract between us as a club and the player is a two-way process. And at the end of the day, the player has a choice whether to accept it or not accept it. So ultimately, you've got to arrive at terms that both parties are happy with. It's true that we can look at the value of a contract over a term rather than looking at it year by year, but I don't think that's particularly uncommon. And I think particularly for developing players, contracts are going to increase over a period of time or have fluctuations in value. And the bit that goes unseen and kind of the public salary cap reports that are produced by Premiership Rugby are always almost kind of a year behind in terms of their information, because they're obviously reporting on years that have finished and been fully audited. But I do think this reduction in senior squad size is one of the kind of elements that we're yet to really appreciate the impact of. So senior squad sizes are reducing in the Premiership. Now, I think partly that's because when clubs are seeking to reduce spend, you just have fewer players. But at Bath, our senior squad size has shrunk, but we've maintained our spend. So therefore, logically, through maths, you're able to spend a higher amount per head because you've reduced the number of players, but you've maintained your spend at the highest level possible. So there's a variety of things that are seen, and then a lot that is unseen. But ultimately, no one wants to come to Bath if it's not a good environment. And all we can do is like put forward our best case to players, explain to them what we think we can do for them, why they'll develop on the field, and arrive at a contract that both parties agree at. And that's what we do. There's no magic to it. It's purely working within the confines of what we have. but it seems to be a good place that people want to be at.
I just don't get the reluctancy to talk about money in our game. I don't.
But it's very personal, isn't it? Like, why it wouldn't be for us to, discuss an individual circumstance.
But ultimately, you could say that the fans are paying the salary. If we talk about what underpins sport, it's fandom, right? Fandom, business, athlete. And I've gone back and forth on this in my experiences of interviewing different people from different sports. Like I was with Jordan Mailata, who won the Super Bowl Philadelphia Eagles. And we were talking about his injuries and stuff like that. First thing he said was, Matt, I'm paid $60,000 to do this. Fair enough. And that's what I thought. Fair enough. Dricus du Plessis, middleweight champion of the world, multi-millionaire now. His salary is published. Why are you going out there, Dricus? Well, you're fighting, you're putting your body, you're putting your brain on the line. Yes, I'm a fighting man. I'm also getting paid £2 million to do it. And I struggle with trying to almost like even within my inner circle of, and you know this, Rob, your son's just signed a pro contract, has he? In football, if I can share that. It's been on social media, so I can. But sport at the highest level is underpinned by money, whether we like it or not. Like, how much are you getting paid to do your job as head coach? How much was I paid to play 30 games on the spin? And it feels like there's this uncomfortable narrative of how much does someone get paid? Someone says to me, okay, right, I want to go and become the first draft of the NBA. You can put a value on that because you can look historically how much players have been paid. Okay, I want to become a second row that plays for Scotland and is a bit of a journeyman. How much money can I make? Well, I can tell you, but it's not out there in the public domain.
I think some is there's reports that are produced by Premiership Rugby. They're pretty detailed. If you seek to find, there's a lot of good information you will find.
What's the average salary of a player?
170k.
Is the average?
Yeah.
Okay, that's gone up from what I thought it was. I thought it was 70.
10's are the highest paid player. And in this report, which was the 23-24 season, 10's are the highest earning on average, and 9's, ironically, are the lowest. But I think once you get into averages, it's kind of, you're dealing with quite small sample sets. So you can be skewed by one player. We're talking 2 or 3 players in each position per club on average. So I'm not sure how helpful averages are, but that's all within the latest Premiership Rugby report. What you're talking about, I think, is breaking it down by individual. Yeah, that's a future discussion for the league. That's nothing to do with us at Bath.
Do you think it causes? I know you've got your Bath hat on. I know, but our relationship runs deep, so that's hard for us because it's we obviously know each other. But with that, so you think it's a personal thing where people are uncomfortable to talk about it?
I think individuals would have their salaries published. And I know it satisfy your curiosity, but I'm not sure what that would then ultimately do for the betterment of the game.
Oh, okay. So even without your Bath hat, you feel that could be problematic. So take out the Bath thing, you think by people talking about salary.
We want to grow the game. Does publishing salaries help us grow the game?
I think it does, yeah.
Do you?
Because I think it increases fandom. I think it increases interaction. I think you look at anything around other sports, when a transfer fee is being spoken about, when a player doesn't perform, we're too nice as a sport when it comes to them things. Fans interact with them. You're also putting a value on some of the greatest athletes in the world. That comes at a value. It's unattainable for most people. And you want it to be unattainable for some people because that puts a premium on it. And that puts a premium value on it. And we don't know the value. That's my point.
Yeah. It's a good debate. That's the debate to be had, isn't it?
Yeah, and I know. And I'd love to get to the point where we can start feeling comfortable and being like, right, yeah, we're signing Santi Carreras on 500 grand a year. It might be 50. I don't know what it is. And that's what I mean. And then you can go and you're almost, and because we have this joined up approach with the Premiership, but you almost want to say to Gloucester, you don't, but I would. You don't want to pay him $500,000? We'll fucking pay him $500,000. We want him. That's how much we value him. We think he is an incredible player. He's robust. He can kick at goal. He can play 10. He can play 15. He can play on the wing. £500,000, bang. And that builds up something that we haven't seen in our game. And that's where you're starting to see now, like Rugby Pass published some stuff about like the highest paid player and, Anton Dupont and Sia Khaleesi and Owen Farrell apparently. And people are saying to me, is that? I'm like, I don't know. Because then I think as a young aspiring athlete, if you're going to choose a sport, which you will get to a point when you get these brilliant athletes, okay, you've got an opportunity to go and play basketball. My lad plays basketball for Scotland. He wants to play rugby. And in my mind, I'm like, well, if you play basketball in the NBA, obviously you've made it. Or you could play in Europe and play for a Barcelona, Real Madrid, or go to Turkey and get paid €1 million if you're a decent player. But Dad, what would I get if I play rugby and I play 40 games a year and I play internationally? I'm like, well, I think your average salary, like you've just shared there, is 170 grand. But, you know, you might get $1 million. I'm hearing RG's on 6. No idea. And I just think that from a kind of parent's point of view or someone in the media, but a national, global interest in the game, that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
So I don't expect you to answer it. Has Rassi been in contact, Johan? You know, when you win the Prem, does he text? Do you chat to him? He's an enigma. I love him.
So firstly, he's done incredibly well with South Africa. I mean, to win the World Cup back-to-back. Obviously started the season very well against the Barbarians, and you've got to respect for what that coaching group and that group of players have done over the last number of years. We speak occasionally over text. He certainly does things his way, and that way has been extremely successful.
Yeah, that's cool. Remember last time we spoke on the pod, you said that you were keen for the South Africa job at some point. I don't expect you to be like, I want to do that tomorrow. But like everyone has like aspirations to do that. There's Franco Smith at Glasgow. I know he'd be keen to do it as well. There's talk of him going back to the Bulls and stuff like that. But that job's up for grabs at some point in the future, isn't it? I don't know how long Rassi wants to keep going. I know you want to do stuff at Bath. I completely get that. But as a proud South African who's been in that environment before, you're talking about one of the most iconic sport teams in the world. It's still there.
When I finished with the Springboks, was privileged, fortunate to do 74 test matches, and as I said earlier, that's been the ultimate. As a young lad growing up in South Africa, I didn't make it to play for South Africa, but I've been one of the coaches for South Africa, and that's been amazing. So, that's something I'd love to do in the future. But as I always say, to become the national coach of South Africa, a lot of people need to think that you're good enough and that you fit in. I spoke about timing, and who knows? That's not a decision for me. That's a decision for others. We've got some amazing coaches from our country. I think you mentioned Franco, that's won the URC with Glasgow. Jacques just won the URC with Leinster. If you look at what South Africa have done from a URC point of view, John Dobson has won the URC. There's Frans Ludeker, who I respect so much, that won the Japanese league a season ago. Puerto Heeman just took the Sabercats to the final in the USA. So there's so many good coaches. If the opportunity ever arises, I'd love to do it. For the time being, I'm stating the obvious at Bath, and I'm a Springbok supporter now with my 2 boys and my little girl and my wife, and we go and watch them as much as we can. Still speak to most of the players there that I've coached, because again, rugby for me is about relationships and respecting what Rassi has done there, and they've got a phenomenal team around him of support staff and of players, and in my view they're quite clearly the best team in the world currently. And I think it's amazing how we, in the time that I was with the Springboks, we tried to get to that All Black team that won the World Cup back-to-back in 2011 and 2015, and the semi-final of 2015, you look at a lot of the players that played in the Springbok team at that day are now the best players in the world. Damien Lelen and Jesse Creel were the centres that day. Andre was the 10. Peter Seftetoué came from the bench. And then so many others made their name. So, and now quite clearly South Africa is the best team in the world, and others are trying to get to them. So, look, it's amazing to be a Springbok supporter. And as I said, I'm proudly South African, and who knows in the future? That's for others to say, not for me to say.
It seems like the job of the Springbok head coach is more than just the Springbok coach. So you talk about managing the players and the staff and all of them things that you need to do. It feels like that out of all the jobs in rugby, the Springbok job is so much more than just being a coach. You're almost controlling the narrative and the emotions of a country. Am I right in saying that? And I think, without speaking for him, I'm a massive Rassi fan, but you can see the weight of that maybe has been felt by him at some points. And you see the emotion of the World Cup, and it's natural. You know, you win a Premiership, you win a Champions Cup, you win a World Cup. It's emotional, but it feels like in that role there, it's so much more, and you have to be ready for that. I don't think it's a case of right, you're going to be the Springboks coach, let's go. I think maybe you tell me, with your background, you'll know better than anyone. Is it more than just being rugby ready? Do you have to be ready?
Yeah, I think you have to be ready, but it's like, you know, when I hear people that are married or that want to get children, it's like, I'm not ready for children. Sometimes when things happen, you have to be ready. But speaking as a South African, 1995, I was there the day that the Springboks won the World Cup at Ellis Park, 15-12. Joel Stransky's drop kick was right in my line of sight, and I remember when Franco Pienaar said, you know, there weren't 60,000 supporters here at Ellis Park. There were 40 million South Africans here, and in 2007 I went with my wife to the final in Stade de France when Springboks won, 15 points to 6, and you know, Kitch Christie was the first coach to win it, and then Jake was the second. And I remember in 2019, JP Ferreira, my good friend, we were with Munster in Cardiff, and we watched South Africa won the World Cup in Japan. And then, you know, a few years ago, we played Leicester at the Rec, and then, you know, watching South Africa win it by a point and Sia lifting the trophy for the second time, and you know, Rassie becoming a legend in South Africa. And I think what he's done incredibly well is together with Sia and everybody involved is unite the country, because as a South African we've got so many challenges, but rugby is the one thing that unites us all, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world. You can only understand it when you are South African and what that does to our country. And I think that's why we are all so proud. I remember as a young lad in 1995 seeing the scenes around me in the new South Africa. You know, Mr. Mandela became the president in 1994, and seeing what that did to us in 95, and then appreciating, as you get a bit older, appreciating that we're a country for all people. And in moments of triumph, seeing what it meant to Sia when he lifted it in Tokyo in 2019. And yeah, it's amazing to be part of that journey, and it's amazing to be South African. And I think that's what rugby does, not only in our country, but all over the world.
Yeah. I find the South Africa thing really fascinating. I get a lot of stick for talking up the South Africans, but I played there when I was younger. So I played in Durban. Leicester sent me there on a sabbatical. So I went to play for DHS Old Boys there. And I always say, and I was a rogue off the streets of Coventry at the age of 18, that I went literally from boy to man, because I had to. I went there to play men's rugby. And the culture around these vicious athletes, and the guys that I played against, like Ubakis Bothas and Schalk Burgers, just to name two. But then the warm, religious, humble gentleman that stands before you. And look, I've played around the world. I've met different athletes, but there's something, I don't know what your views are, Rob, on South African people. I don't know, I think it's just a really interesting mindset that they have to be able to carry on athletically how they do, and then be the kind of humans that they are.
And we're fortunate to have a number at Bath, both players and off-field staff, and they're very welcoming. Like, that's the first thing, they're very welcoming to everybody, but they do have this unique bond. They speak this funny language to each other.
I'm fluent in it.
But yeah, it's part of their heart, isn't it? The rugby's in their hearts, and yeah, it's very inspirational.
Do you think we're lacking a bit of that in England, or not?
Yeah.
You do? Yeah.
It's our culture, it's our mindset, we're a nation, I think, that likes to keep things just guarded slightly, aren't we? We don't like to show it.
Are you talking about money?
Bit of everything.
Yeah, no, you are right.
I'll echo what Johann said earlier, that there were very special moments in life. That when we came back to Bath on the Sunday after winning the Premiership final, I don't think any of us could have expected what we saw in Bath on that Sunday afternoon. And to be there and to experience it, and to kind of understand the impact sport can have on a community and on a city. It was just mind-blowing, really. And I felt so fortunate to like have a small involvement in it. And I think it would have given us all a huge like motivation to go back and do it again. See how far we can take this, and see if we can inspire that city of Bath to kind of go again next year. It was really special. So I think it is there within us. It sits within us all, and it's amazing we had the opportunity to kind of experience that with the people of Bath.
What do you think it is, Johann, on a more human element? So you've seen it in South Africa, you saw it in '95, a different world in Bath compared to the streets of South Africa, but it's the same, sport uniting people. So if you're seeing that as a youngster there, and it's had a profound effect on your life, and I'm sure the scenes in Bath with the boat shoes, and they wouldn't have been wearing tweed jackets because it would have been too hot, and I'm only joking when I profile people, but it's the same emotion. What do you think it is from a human psychological element, that is?
I think we all belong to an amazing game, a game of all shapes and sizes, a game where once you're in between those 4 white lines, it's you versus me, like you get challenged. And I say rugby is a lot like Christmas. You're going to get some and you're going to give some. And can you take it when you get some, and can you give more to your opponent? And then this thing around the human spirit, around respect, because I think that's the one thing that we as a game have, is respect. That ability to, once the final whistle goes, to put that behind you, shake somebody's hand, look them in the eye, and then go and have a beer afterwards, or a water, whatever you choose to have. In terms of how do I link that from South Africa to Bath, somebody that I've got huge respect for is Andy Robinson. And I brought him into our coaching group because he knew what the old Bath was like, what was the thing that was actually their point of difference, and our point of difference is tough to beat. And why I use the tough to beat, people want to be inspired, they want to belong to, and I found with South Africa, the Bulls, Munster, and now Bath, people want to get inspired by what people do on the field, and then how good are they off the field. And I want to give our players so much credit. They're normal human beings, human spirit. It's the way that you give a signature. It's the way that you pose for a picture. It's can you go out of your way to give somebody else a great experience. And I think that's the thing that you've got to taste, you've got to see. And I'll give you a very simplistic example. So I live at Farley, where we train, and there's this hill, as you're about to turn up the hill into Farley, there's this downhill hill, and there's a bar flag. And that bar flag haven't been there before, but the bar flag's been there for the last 7 or 8 weeks. And that's such a small bit, but I get goosebumps when I see it. It's like, that farmer, he's a Bath supporter. And that's so visible in the city now. And the people have always been there, but now they live it, now they speak it. And the presence in the city. When you go to a restaurant, there's a Bath flag now on the inside. And I saw this in Munster. People are proud to wear their Bath jerseys, their Bath hats, and that's what people are doing. And I think it's something that we rediscovered as a club, that connection between the rugby and the city. And ultimately, again, I'm not an Englishman, but what I've seen in a lot of other places is the football teams, but Bath, it's rugby. And then that bit I can't stress enough, that belong to that gladiator sport, that you see the people on the field and all of a sudden they're walking next to you in the street. And I think that's where our playing group has been fantastic. They understand that. Someone like Tom Dunn, he lives it, he feels it, he bleeds it. But then the players that came in, Ollie, Ted, the Worcester players, what a big difference they made. And there's a quote I've used before. It says, I cried because I had no shoes until I saw a man who had no feet. And I remember when they came in, it's how grateful they were for the opportunity. And now Ted Hill is one of the very best Bath players. And that bit I said, doesn't matter where you're from, Benno Barno, how he has been loved in our city. And, you know, there's too many to name, but I think it's that belonging to something. And, yeah, we've got something very unique and very special. And back to the history, but it's the teacher at my lads' school that have been there 30 years ago when Bath won it in 96, and he was there again a few weekends ago. And then I think this game about his kids, and I didn't understand this until I have my 2 little boys and my little girl. All of a sudden they want to be Finn Russell or Ollie Lawrence or Cam Redpath. All of a sudden it's come on you Bath. And seeing how somebody like Guy Pepper coming in, how he came in as a young lad, he just wanted to become better, and how he was like, wow, this has struck us. And to Rob's point, what I saw from the top of the bus Sunday, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, first time I've experienced it. We won some big things at the Bulls, but against South Africa is very different to that inner city of Bath, and people want to belong to, and they're very proud to be associated with this club.
Yeah, that's so cool. After all that, I feel guilty talking about money now, because our game is a special game and it is different. And, you know, I go back and forth on these different things, and not that I ever forget what the makeup of our game is. It's underpinned by respect and, you know, these unbelievable athletes going out there, literally putting their bodies on the line for their clubs or their cities, towns, or whatever it is. And it's the greatest sport in the world, and to be able to share the studio with you, Rob, as well, but Johann, with you and your history in the game and what you've done for Bath and what you've done for the Premiership and rugby as a whole has been a real treat. So thank you very much.
No, thanks, Jim. Last point, I think rugby is about memories. And when we entered the studio, it's like, you know, one of my memories of you is being, you know, proud of playing for your country. And 2013, Nelspruit, you and Eben, and I think that's what ties us all together. It's this amazing game that we were all part of. And whether you coach or you recruit, or you're an agent, or you're a supporter, or you're a player or an ex-player, I think you can see the value of our game in our ex-players, and what someone like yourself have done for the game and all over the world is the value of our game is in our ex-players, and that goes into our supporters. And we've got an unbelievable game, and we all have got to look after it, because there's many challenges in the game, but if we all stick together as a rugby union, if you look at what the Lions are doing in Australia, you know, all the test matches are going to happen this weekend. We've got a beautiful game, and we have to look after it.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Rob, awesome having you in
Thank
as
you,
well.
Jim.
Yeah, we'll do it again, eh?
Why not? Episode 2.
Episode 2, we'll do it. Great.